The crystal chandeliers caught the light like 1,000 imprisoned stars, each one mocking me as I balanced another tray of champagne flutes. My feet ached in the borrowed heels, 2 sizes too small, but beggars couldn't afford to be choosers, and I was the definition of a beggar pretending to belong in a palace. The Metropolitan Gala, the event of the season, where New York's elite gathered to see and be seen, to broker deals worth more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes, to exist in a world so far removed from mine that we might as well have been different species, and I was here serving them drinks. The black and white uniform they'd given me was stiff, uncomfortable, scratching against my skin with each movement. But I smiled, always smiled, because this job, this humiliating, back-breaking job, was the only thing standing between my daughter and eviction, between keeping the lights on and sitting in the dark. Champagne? I offered, approaching a cluster of women dripping in diamonds that could pay off my student loans 3 times over. They looked through me, literally through me, as if I were made of the same glass as the flutes I carried. I'd grown used to invisibility. In their world, service staff were furniture with pulses. I moved through the ballroom, my reflection catching in the gilt-edged mirrors that lined the walls. Pale, tired. My dark hair pulled back so tightly it gave me a headache, because God forbid a single strand fall out of place. My face bare of makeup, except for the mascara I'd salvaged from the bottom of a tube, trying to look presentable, professional, invisible in the right way. The orchestra swelled, something classical, something expensive sounding. Couples moved onto the dance floor, their movements fluid and practiced. Old money knew how to waltz. I barely knew how to keep my balance in these shoes. Emma. I turned to find Marcus, the head server, gesturing sharply toward the main entrance. VIP arrival. Make sure the champagne table near the East Gallery is fully stocked. Now, I nodded, grateful for something to do that took me away from the crowd. The East Gallery was quieter, less populated, a small mercy. I was arranging the bottles when I felt it. That peculiar sensation of being watched. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, my skin prickling with awareness. I turned slowly, expecting to find Marcus checking on my work. Instead, I found him. Ethan fucking Carmichael. He stood 15 feet away, devastating in a custom tuxedo that probably cost more than my car, back when I'd had a car. Dark hair perfectly styled. Sharp jawline, those blue eyes that had once looked at me like I was something precious. Something worth keeping. Before he'd decided I wasn't, my heart seized in my chest, that familiar ache spreading through my ribs like poison. 3 years. 3 years since he'd told me I wasn't suitable for his lifestyle, that I didn't fit into his world, that loving me had been a mistake he needed to correct. 3 years. And he still had the power to make me feel small. He was with someone, of course, a willowy blonde in a dress that cost more than my rent, her hand possessive on his arm, her laugh tinkling like the champagne glasses I carried. Everything I wasn't. Everything I could never be. I turned away quickly, my hand shaking as I reached for another bottle. Maybe he hadn't seen me. Maybe I could disappear into the wallpaper, into the shadows, into the blessed anonymity of the serving class. Emma? His voice. God, his voice still did things to me I wished it didn't. I straightened slowly, forcing my face into a neutral mask, the kind I'd perfected over months of customer service jobs. Professional. Distant. Dead inside. Can I help you, sir? The words tasted like ash. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Discomfort? Did he actually have the capacity to feel shame? I didn't know you were... He stopped, glancing at his date, who was watching our exchange with barely concealed curiosity. Working here. Life's full of surprises, I said, my voice flat. Champagne? I held out the tray like a shield, like a wall between us. He didn't take one. Emma, your date looks thirsty, I interrupted, looking past him, through him, giving him the same treatment his people had been giving me all night. Enjoy your evening, sir. I walked away, my head high, my heart in pieces. Again. Always again. The rest of the evening blurred into a haze of fake smiles and aching feet. I avoided the East Gallery, avoided anywhere Ethan might be, which was nearly impossible in a ballroom with only so many exits. I was refilling my tray near the kitchen entrance when the energy in the room changed. It was subtle at first. Conversations faltering mid-sentence, heads turning toward the main entrance, a ripple of awareness spreading through the crowd like a wave. The orchestra continued playing, but somehow the music seemed quieter, as if even the instruments were holding their breath. And then I saw why. He entered like a storm contained in human form, tall, easily 6'3" or 6'4", moving with a predator's grace that made everyone else look clumsy by comparison. His tuxedo was immaculate, perfectly tailored to a frame that suggested controlled violence beneath the civilized exterior. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face too sharp to be classically handsome but compelling in a way that made it impossible to look away. But it wasn't just him. 2 men flanked him, mountains in expensive suits with cold eyes that scanned the room like security cameras. Earpieces, hands that never strayed far from their jackets. Military precision in every step. The crowd parted for him without being asked, like the Red Sea. Like he was Moses, and they were the water, and getting in his way wasn't just rude, it was dangerous. I'd lived in New York long enough to recognize power when I saw it. Real power. Not the corporate boardroom kind that Ethan wielded, but something older, darker, more primal. This was a man who didn't just break rules, he made them. Who is that? I whispered to Sarah, another server who'd appeared beside me. She'd gone pale, her tray rattling slightly in her trembling hands. Dante Moretti, she breathed. Oh my God, I didn't think he'd actually come. The name meant nothing to me, should it have? He runs half the city, Sarah continued, her voice barely audible. The parts the mayor pretends don't exist. My cousin's husband's brother works for one of his... She stopped abruptly, as if saying more might summon something terrible. Just stay out of his way. Men like that? They're not here for champagne and small talk. I watched as the host of the gala, some tech billionaire whose name I couldn't remember, rushed to greet him, hand extended, smile too wide to be genuine. Dante Moretti took the offered hand with the enthusiasm of someone touching a dead fish, his expression carved from granite. He said something, low and brief. The billionaire nodded frantically, gesturing toward the upper gallery, the private rooms where the real deals were made. And then, as if pulled by invisible strings, Dante Moretti's gaze swept across the ballroom. It landed on me. Time crystallized, froze. I stopped breathing. His eyes were black, not brown, not dark blue, but black, like staring into an abyss that stared back. For 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, his attention fixed on me with the intensity of a spotlight, pinning me in place. I couldn't move, couldn't think. Could only stand there, tray in hand, while something ancient and terrifying in those eyes recognized something in me I didn't know existed. Then one of his men leaned in, whispered something, and the spell broke. Dante Moretti looked away, and I could breathe again. You okay? Sarah touched my arm. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine. I lied, my voice shaking. Just tired. I needed air, space, distance from whatever that had been. I headed toward the service corridor, my hands still trembling, my heart racing for reasons I didn't want to examine. The door was just ahead when I heard rapid footsteps behind me. Emma. Wait, Ethan. Of course. I kept walking, pushing through the door into the narrow hallway that connected the kitchen to the service areas. He followed. Emma, please, just give me a minute. I spun around, and all the rage I'd been swallowing for 3 years came surging up my throat. A minute? You want a minute? You had years, Ethan. Years of minutes you chose to spend telling me I wasn't good enough. He flinched. Good. That's not fair, he started. Fair? I laughed, and it sounded broken even to my ears. You want to talk about fair? You ended things right before I found out I was pregnant. You blocked my number before I could tell you that you had a daughter. You moved on before I'd even finished crying. So don't talk to me about fair. His face went white. You... What? You have a daughter, I said, each word a knife. Her name is Lily. She's 2.5. She has your eyes, and you will never, ever meet her, because you made it very clear that I don't belong in your world, and neither does she." I turned to walk away, satisfaction and pain warring in my chest. That's when the door at the far end of the corridor opened. Dante Moretti stepped through, alone this time, his security presumably guarding the entrance. His eyes found me immediately, as if he'd known exactly where I'd be. And Ethan, who'd never been afraid of anything in his privileged life, took 3 steps back. The air in the corridor changed, became heavy, oppressive. Dante Moretti's presence filled the space like smoke, like poison gas, suffocating and inescapable. He looked at Ethan with the kind of contempt reserved for insects. Then his gaze shifted to me, and something in those black eyes softened, microscopically, but enough to notice. "You're upset," he said. His voice was dark honey over gravel, an accent I couldn't place lurking beneath the English. "That displeases me." I blinked, confusion cutting through my anger. I'm sorry, sir. I was just—" "He made you cry. Not a question. A statement. An indictment." I hadn't realized tears were streaming down my face until he said it. Ethan found his voice, tried to inject authority into it. "This is a private conversation, if you'll excuse us." Dante Moretti's head turned toward him with mechanical precision. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. Whatever Ethan saw in those eyes made him go silent mid-sentence. "Leave," Dante said quietly. "Before I change my mind about letting you." Ethan left. Practically ran. And I was alone in a service corridor with the most dangerous man in New York, my tears still wet on my cheeks, my world tilting on its axis. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "What's your name?" he asked, though something told me he already knew. "Emma," I whispered. "Emma Reeves." He nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something. Then he reached into his jacket. I tensed, irrationally thinking of weapons, and pulled out a handkerchief. Silk. Expensive. Monogrammed. He handed it to me. I took it because refusing seemed more dangerous than accepting, dabbing at my face with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "Thank you," I managed. "You work here?" He gestured toward the ballroom. "Just for tonight. Catering service." His eyes traveled over me, not lecherous, but assessing, cataloging. "You don't belong here." My stomach dropped. Was everyone going to remind me tonight how much I didn't fit in? "I know," I said bitterly. "Trust me, I know." I didn't mean it as an insult. He stepped closer, and I caught his scent. Sandalwood and something darker, smoke and spice. "You're better than this. Better than them." I didn't know what to say to that. "The man who upset you," Dante continued, his voice dropping lower. "He's important to you?" "He was," I admitted. "A long time ago." "And now?" "Now he's nothing." Dante smiled. It was barely there, a ghost of an expression, but it transformed his face from terrifying to something that made my breath catch. "Good," he said. "You should go home. Rest. Forget tonight happened." He turned to leave, and I should have let him. Should have counted my blessings that this bizarre interaction was ending. Should have gone back to my champagne trays and my borrowed shoes and my invisible existence. Instead, I heard myself say, "Why did you come down here?" He paused, his hand on the door. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he looked back at me, and there was something hungry in his gaze. Something possessive that should have terrified me. "Because I saw you," he said simply. "And I wanted to see you closer." He left before I could respond, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cage locking shut. I stood there, alone in the corridor, his handkerchief still clutched in my hand, the scent of sandalwood still in my nose. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that my life had just changed in ways I couldn't begin to understand. I made it home at 3 a.m, my feet bleeding inside the borrowed heels, Dante Moretti's handkerchief still tucked in my pocket, like a secret I didn't know how to keep. The apartment was dark, silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sirens, the lullaby of New York's forgotten neighborhoods. I locked the door behind me, checked it twice, then collapsed against it, finally allowing myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. My hands were shaking, had been shaking since the corridor. Since those black eyes had pinned me in place, and that dark voice had said things that made no sense. I saw you, and I wanted to see you closer. I pushed off the door and moved through the cramped living room to the even smaller bedroom I shared with Lily. Mrs. Chen from next door had put her to bed hours ago, and she was sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling, her dark curls spread across the pillow. Ethan's curls, his eyes, his daughter, whether he wanted her or not. I brushed a kiss against her forehead, breathed in her baby shampoo scent, let her innocence wash away some of the night's strangeness. "Mama's home," I whispered. "Everything's okay." But I wasn't sure if I was reassuring her or myself. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in the dark, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying every moment. Ethan's shock when I'd told him about Lily. His cowardice when Dante Moretti had appeared. The way he'd fled like a child caught stealing. And Dante himself. The way the entire ballroom had shifted when he entered, like gravity had changed direction, and he was the new center everyone orbited around. The cold dismissal he'd given Ethan. The unexpected gentleness when he'd handed me his handkerchief. "You're better than this. Better than them." No one had ever said anything like that to me. Especially not someone who looked like they could buy and sell the entire building I lived in without noticing the expense. I finally drifted off around dawn, and my dreams were full of dark eyes and dangerous smiles. The next morning arrived too soon and too bright. Lily woke me by climbing onto my chest and patting my face with sticky hands. "Mama, hungry. Good morning to you too, princess." I kissed her nose, making her giggle. "Let's get you some breakfast." Our morning routine was practiced, efficient. I had exactly 45 minutes before I needed to drop her at daycare and get to my day job at the diner across town. Toast with butter for her, black coffee for me because we were out of milk again, and payday wasn't until Friday. I was brushing her hair when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, probably a spam call, but something made me swipe to accept. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Emma Reeves?" The voice was professional, female, with a crisp British accent that screamed expensive education and expensive everything else. "Yes? Who is this?" "My name is Victoria. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Moretti. He would like to extend an invitation for lunch today at 1 o'clock. A car will be sent to collect you." My heart stopped. Actually stopped. "I'm sorry, what?" "Lunch. 1 o'clock. The address I have on file is 2847 Morrison Street, apartment 4B. "Is that correct? How did he have my address? How did he have my phone number? We'd spoken for maybe 5 minutes in a service corridor, and now he was sending cars. I have to work. I can't just..." "Mr. Moretti has arranged for your employer to be compensated for your absence. The day is yours." This was insane. This was absolutely insane. "What if I say no?" I asked, trying to find solid ground in a conversation that felt like quicksand. Victoria's pause was delicate, almost amused. "Mr. Moretti doesn't extend invitations lightly, Miss Reeves. It would be unwise to decline." There was no threat in her voice. She didn't need to make one. The implication hung in the air like smoke. 1 o'clock, I heard myself say. "Excellent. The car will arrive at 12:45. Mr. Moretti prefers punctuality." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, my reflection caught in the black screen. I looked terrified. "Mama, okay?" Lily was watching me with those too perceptive eyes, her brush forgotten in her hand. I forced a smile. "Mama's fine, baby. Just fine." I spent the morning in a daze, going through the motions at the diner while my mind spun in circles. I told my manager I had a family emergency, watched his irritation morph into understanding when he checked his phone, and saw an email confirming a mysterious payment that more than covered my absence. How much power did someone need to make these things happen with a single phone call? At 12:30, I was back home, standing in front of my closet, which was less a closet and more a cruel joke. I owned exactly 3 outfits that weren't work uniforms or clothes with spit-up stains. None of them were appropriate for lunch with a man who probably ate at restaurants with Michelin stars. I settled on a simple black dress, the one I'd worn to my college graduation, back when I'd still believed in futures and possibilities. It was plain but clean, fitted but modest. I paired it with my only good shoes, the ones I saved for job interviews that never led anywhere. My hair I left down, dark waves falling past my shoulders because I didn't have time for anything fancy. Minimal makeup. I looked like myself, which meant I looked poor and trying not to be. At exactly 12:45, my phone buzzed. The car was here. I kissed Lily goodbye. Mrs. Chen had agreed to watch her for the afternoon, asking no questions but giving me looks that said she had plenty, and headed downstairs. The car waiting at the curb was a black Mercedes, the kind with windows so dark you couldn't see inside, the kind that cost more than I'd earn in a decade. A man in a suit stood beside it, his posture military straight, his expression carved from stone. Miss Reeves. He opened the back door. Please. I hesitated, every instinct screaming that getting in this car was a mistake, that I should run back upstairs and lock the door and pretend none of this was happening. But I thought of the electricity bill I couldn't pay, of Lily's daycare fees, of the eviction notice that had been taped to my door last week, and I thought of dark eyes that had looked at me like I was someone worth seeing. I got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and money. The seats were heated. Classical music played softly through speakers I couldn't see. The man who'd opened my door got into the driver's seat, and we pulled away from the curb without a word. I watched my neighborhood disappear through the tinted windows, the bodega on the corner, the broken streetlight, the graffiti-covered walls. We moved into different parts of the city, where the buildings grew taller and cleaner, where doormen stood guard and trees lined the sidewalks. 20 minutes later, we stopped in front of a restaurant I'd seen featured in magazines I couldn't afford. Can, the characters elegant and mysterious above a door, flanked by security that looked more appropriate for a bank vault. The driver opened my door. Mr. Moretti is waiting inside. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, feeling every eye on the street turn toward me. I didn't belong here. Everyone could see it. But I walked toward the entrance anyway, my head high, my heart hammering. The door opened before I could touch it. A hostess in a dress that cost more than my rent smiled with practiced warmth. Miss Reeves, this way, please. The interior was dim, intimate, with private booths separated by rice paper screens and lighting that felt like candlelight without actual candles. I caught glimpses of other diners, men in expensive suits, women in designer clothes, conversations conducted in whispers over plates that looked like art. The hostess led me through the main dining room to a private section in the back, separated by a solid door that she opened with a key card. And there he was. Dante Moretti sat alone at a table set for two, his attention on his phone, his presence filling the room like a dark star pulling everything into its orbit. He wore a suit in charcoal gray. No tie, the top button of his shirt undone in the only concession to casual I suspected he ever made. He looked up as I entered, and those black eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Emma. He stood, and the simple gesture felt weighted with significance. You came. Did I have a choice? The words came out sharper than I intended. His mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. There's always a choice. You made yours. Please sit. I sat, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. The hostess disappeared, the door closing with a soft click that sounded far too final. You arranged for my work to be covered, I said. You sent a car. You got my phone number and my address. How? I wanted to see you again, he said simply, as if that explained everything. So I made it happen. That's not an answer. It's the only answer that matters. He poured water into my glass from a crystal pitcher, the gesture almost domestic. You're angry. I'm confused. Yesterday you were a stranger. Today you're... What? Buying my time? Stalking me? Protecting you? I blinked. From what? From men like the one who made you cry. His expression darkened. Ethan Carmichael. I had him investigated after you left. The reports made for... interesting reading. Ice flooded my veins. You investigated him? You had no right. He abandoned you when you were pregnant, Dante interrupted, his voice still quiet but edged with something dangerous. Left you to raise his child alone while he spent his trust fund on cars and mistresses. He has 3 other children he doesn't acknowledge. 4 women he's destroyed with promises he never intended to keep. His eyes met mine. Tell me I had no right to know who hurt you. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process what he was saying. 3 other children? I whispered finally. 3. All under 5. All with mothers he discarded when they became inconvenient. Dante leaned back, his gaze never leaving my face. You were lucky he showed his true nature before you wasted more years on him. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt sick. Why do you care? I asked. You don't know me. We talked for 5 minutes. Why does any of this matter to you? For a long moment. He didn't answer. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. His skin was warm, his grip gentle but absolutely firm. When I was 15, he said, my mother was murdered by my father's enemies. They burned our house down with her inside while my father was away on business. I was at school. I came home to ashes and screams I'll hear until the day I die. My throat closed. Dante, she looked like you. His thumb traced circles on my palm, the gesture absent, automatic, not exactly. But the eyes. The way she carried herself, like she was holding the world together through sheer will even when it was breaking her. The kindness she showed to people who didn't deserve it. His jaw tightened. I saw you last night, serving drinks to people who looked through you like you were glass, and I saw her. And I knew I couldn't walk away. Tears burned behind my eyes. I'm not your mother. No. He raised my hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to my knuckles that sent electricity racing up my arm. You're better. You're here, and I'm going to make sure you stay safe. I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving, Emma. The difference is whether they'll accept it. A waiter appeared, silent, efficient, setting down plates I didn't remember ordering. Food that looked too beautiful to eat. Dante released my hand, and I felt the loss of his touch like a physical thing. Eat, he said. We'll talk more after. I picked up my fork, my appetite gone, but my survival instincts too strong to refuse food I didn't have to pay for. The first bite melted on my tongue. Flavors I couldn't identify, couldn't begin to afford. How did you find me last night? I asked between bites. In the corridor. I followed you. Why? Because I wanted to. He took a sip of wine, his eyes holding mine over the rim of the glass. Because from the moment I saw you in that ballroom, everyone else became background noise. Because I'm a selfish man who takes what he wants, and I wanted to know why you were crying. And now you know. Now I know. He set down his glass, and now I'm going to fix it. You can't fix my life, Dante. Watch me. There was no arrogance in his voice, just certainty, the kind of certainty that came from a lifetime of making the impossible happen through sheer force of will. We ate in silence for a while, the air between us charged with things unsaid. I studied him when I thought he wasn't looking. The sharp planes of his face, the scar that traced his left eyebrow, the way his shoulders filled out his jacket with the kind of strength that came from violence, not Jim's. He was terrifying. He was magnetic. He was everything I should run from. And I was still sitting here, eating his food, letting him hold my hand, listening to him make promises that sounded like threats and felt like salvation. I need to get back to my daughter, I said finally, setting down my fork. Thank you for lunch, for everything. But I can't do this. Do what? Whatever this is. I have a child to think about. I can't get involved with... I gestured helplessly at him, at the restaurant, at the world he represented. This. Dante smiled. Really smiled this time. It was devastating. Emma? He said gently. You're already involved. You were involved the moment I saw you. The moment I decided you were mine to protect. He stood, moving around the table with predatory grace, tilting my chin up so I had to meet his eyes. But I'm not a monster. I won't force you into anything. I'll give you time to understand what's happening here. Time to see that this, us, is inevitable. There is no us. Not yet. His thumb brushed my lower lip and I stopped breathing. But there will be. Because I keep what's mine, Emma, and you're mine. You just don't know it yet." He stepped back, breaking the spell, and suddenly I could think again. "The car will take you home," he said, returning to his seat as if he hadn't just turned my world inside out. "Your rent has been paid for the next 6 months. There's an envelope on your kitchen counter with enough cash to cover your other expenses. You'll find a new phone as well. My number is programmed in. Use it when you're ready to stop fighting the inevitable." I stood, my legs shaking. "I can't accept." "You can. You will." His expression hardened slightly. "You have a daughter who needs stability. I'm providing it. Refuse if your pride requires it, but don't punish her for my generosity." He'd boxed me in. Perfectly. Completely. "This doesn't mean anything," I said, my voice breaking. "Money doesn't make me yours." "No," he agreed, "but time will. Go home, Emma. Take care of your daughter. Think about what I've offered. We'll speak again soon." It wasn't a question. It was a promise. I left the restaurant, my mind spinning, my heart racing. The car was waiting. The same driver, the same silent efficiency. I collapsed into the back seat, and only when we were moving did I let the tears come, because he was right, and that terrified me more than anything else. I was already involved, already caught in something I didn't understand. Already his, whether I admitted it or not. The envelope was exactly where he'd said it would be. I stood in my kitchen, staring at it like it might explode. Thick cream paper, expensive weight, my name written across the front in elegant script. No return address, no explanation needed. Mrs. Chen had already left, a note saying Lily was fed and bathed and sleeping peacefully. I should check on her, should kiss her goodnight, reassure myself she was safe and real, and mine. Instead, I picked up the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was more cash than I'd ever seen in one place. $100 bills, crisp and new, bound in neat stacks. I counted once, twice. $30,000. $30,000. My knees gave out. I slid down the cabinet to the floor, the money spilling across my lap like obscene confetti. This was a year's salary. More. This was Lily's college fund. This was safety and security and choices I'd never had. This was a cage made of gold. Beside the cash was a phone, sleek, expensive, already charged. I powered it on with trembling fingers. One contact saved. Dante. No last name needed. Like he was the only Dante in the world. Maybe in his world he was. I should throw it all back in his face. Should march down to wherever he lived and tell him I wasn't for sale. That my daughter and I didn't need his blood money. That we'd survive the way we always had. Barely. Desperately. But on our own terms. But the eviction notice was still taped inside my junk drawer. The electricity bill was still 2 months overdue. Lily's daycare had sent 3 increasingly urgent emails about my outstanding balance. And I was so goddamn tired of drowning. I gathered the money with shaking hands, hid it in the back of my closet behind clothes I never wore, and went to check on my daughter. She was sleeping like an angel, her face peaceful, her small hand curled around her favorite stuffed rabbit, the one with the missing eye and the torn ear that I'd promised to replace when I could afford it. When I could afford it. That phrase had governed my entire adult life. Maybe not anymore. I kissed her forehead, breathed in her innocence, and made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. 3 days passed before I used the phone. 3 days of going to work at the diner, coming home to Lily, pretending everything was normal while Dante Moretti's presence haunted every corner of my life. I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder, expecting to see him watching from the shadows. I'd find my hand drifting to the pocket where I'd tucked his handkerchief, my fingers tracing the monogrammed initials. DM. Dante Moretti. Or maybe Dangerous Man. On the 4th day, I caved. I was giving Lily dinner, mac and cheese from a box, the fancy kind I could suddenly afford. When someone knocked on my door, not the tentative tap of a neighbor, not the aggressive pound of a landlord, something in between. I checked the peephole and felt my stomach drop. A woman stood in the hallway, mid-30s, elegant in a way that spoke of money and breeding, her suit perfectly tailored, her expression professionally neutral. She held a large shopping bag from a store I recognized from magazine spreads. I opened the door slowly. Yes? Emma Reeves? British accent. The same voice from the phone call, Victoria. Mr. Moretti asked me to deliver this. May I come in? It wasn't really a question. I stepped aside, hyper-aware of my cramped apartment, the peeling paint, the furniture held together with hope and duct tape. If Victoria noticed or cared, her expression didn't show it. She set the bag on my coffee table with careful precision. Mr. Moretti thought you might need appropriate attire for tomorrow evening. Tomorrow evening? He'll be collecting you at 7. There's a charity gala, different from the one where you met. This time you'll be attending as his guest, not as staff. Her smile was polite, practiced. The dress should fit. He's quite good at estimating such things. My face burned. He can't just... I didn't agree to. There's also something for your daughter. Victoria pulled out a second, smaller bag. Mr. Moretti understands you'll need childcare arrangements. I've taken the liberty of vetting several highly qualified nannies. Their information is in the folder. She produced a leather portfolio like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat. This is insane, I whispered. This is how Mr. Moretti operates, Victoria corrected gently. He identifies what he wants and removes obstacles. You and your daughter are now under his protection. Fighting it will only make things more difficult. I'm not some possession he can just claim. No, Victoria agreed. You're something far more valuable. You're someone he's chosen to care about. Her expression softened slightly, almost sympathetic. I've worked for Mr. Moretti for 8 years, Miss Reeves. I've never seen him take a personal interest in anyone the way he has with you. Whatever you think this is, I promise you it's more complicated than you understand. She moved toward the door, then paused. A word of advice? Don't run. Men like Dante Moretti always find what they're looking for, and the chase makes them intense. She left before I could respond. I stood frozen, staring at the bags like they might contain snakes. Lily had abandoned her dinner and was investigating the smaller bag with the single-minded focus of a toddler who'd spotted something interesting. Mama, look! She pulled out a stuffed rabbit, not just any rabbit, an exact replica of her favorite, but new, perfect, with both eyes and intact ears, and beneath it, a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. For Lily, because every princess needs her knight. D. My daughter hugged the rabbit with a squeal of delight, and my heart cracked clean open. He'd noticed. In those few minutes in the corridor, in whatever investigation he'd conducted, he'd learned about my daughter's favorite toy and replaced it without being asked. This wasn't just about me. He was weaving himself into Lily's life, too. I picked up the phone with shaking hands and typed out a message. We need to talk. His response came within seconds. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Wear the dress. Not a question. Never a question with him. The dress was red. Deep crimson silk that felt like water against my skin, cut to fit my body like it had been made specifically for me, which, given everything else, it probably had been. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, the only full-length reflective surface I had, and barely recognized myself. My hair fell in soft waves I'd actually had time to style. The makeup I'd applied with a steady hand for once made my eyes look larger, my lips fuller. The dress transformed my body from young mother surviving on ramen to something else entirely. I looked like I belonged in Dante's world. The realization terrified me. Mrs. Chen was watching Lily again, paid in cash I'd peeled from Dante's envelope with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. She'd asked no questions, just given me a long, knowing look that said she understood exactly what was happening. At exactly 7 o'clock, my phone buzzed. I'm downstairs. No car this time. He'd come himself. I grabbed the small clutch Victoria had included, also perfectly matched to the dress, and headed down. My hands shook on the railing, my heart hammered against my ribs. He was waiting on the sidewalk, leaning against a black car that probably cost more than this entire building. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like sin personified, his dark hair perfectly styled, his expression unreadable until he saw me. Then something flickered in those black eyes. Heat. Possession. Hunger. Emma. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. You're exquisite. I descended the last few steps, acutely aware of his gaze tracking my every movement. You can't just summon me like this. Send people to my home. Make decisions about my life without asking. I can. He opened the car door, his hand extended. And I will. Because you won't make the decisions that keep you safe. So I'll make them for you. That's not how relationships work. This isn't a relationship, Emma. He stepped closer, crowding me against the car, his scent wrapping around me like smoke. This is an inevitability. You can fight it, delay it, pretend you have a choice. But we both know how this ends. How? His hand cupped my jaw, thumb tracing my lower lip. With you in my bed, in my life, under my protection, mine in every way that matters. I should push him away, should slap that arrogant expression off his face, should run back upstairs and lock the door and never look back. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "You're insane." Probably. His smile was dark, dangerous. "Get in the car, Emma. Let me show you the world you were always meant to inhabit." I got in the car. The drive was silent, charged with tension that made the air feel thick. Dante sat close enough that I could feel his heat, far enough that we weren't touching, but his presence filled the space, made it impossible to think about anything else. "Where are we going?" I asked finally. "The Sinclair Foundation Gala. $5,000 a plate. New York's elite pretending to care about childhood literacy while they network and broker deals." His hand found mine in the darkness, lacing our fingers together. "You'll be at my side. You'll smile. You'll let them see that you're under my protection." "Why?" "Because Ethan Carmichael will be there." His grip tightened slightly, and he needs to understand that touching you, speaking to you, even looking at you is now a death sentence. Ice flooded my veins. "Dante, I don't make threats, Emma. I make promises. And I promised myself that anyone who hurts you will regret it." He raised our joined hands to his lips, pressed a kiss to my knuckles. "He abandoned you. Left you to struggle alone. That debt comes due tonight. I don't want revenge. This isn't revenge. This is a statement. You're mine now. The world needs to know it." We pulled up to a hotel that made the previous venue look modest. Valets rushed to open doors. Photographers lined the red carpet. Actual paparazzi, flashbulbs popping like small explosions. Dante emerged first, then extended his hand to me. I took it because refusing would mean falling on my face in front of cameras that were already swiveling toward us. The flashes were blinding. Questions shouted from every direction. "Mr. Moretti, who's your date? Is this a new relationship? Miss, what's your name?" Dante's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me against his side with possessive certainty. He didn't answer the questions, didn't acknowledge the cameras. He just walked forward like he owned the world, and I was dragged along in his wake. We entered the hotel ballroom, and it was like the previous gala all over again. Except this time, I wasn't invisible. Every head turned. Every conversation paused. The weight of hundreds of eyes fell on us like physical touch, and I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. Dante's hand tightened on my waist. "Breathe," he murmured against my ear. "You're safe. I have you." We moved through the crowd, and it parted like the Red Sea again. But this time, people weren't just avoiding Dante. They were studying me, cataloging, assessing, trying to figure out who I was and why I mattered. "Dante?" A man in his 60s approached, his smile too wide, his handshake too eager. "Good to see you. And who is this lovely creature?" "Emma Reeves," Dante said, his tone making it clear no further explanation would be provided. "Emma, this is Senator Morrison. He's very interested in childhood literacy programs." The senator's eyes flickered with something like fear. "Of course. Very passionate about education. Perhaps we could discuss..." "Perhaps." Dante steered me away before the man could finish. We moved from group to group, Dante introducing me with my name and nothing else, as if that was all anyone needed to know. Some people were curious, some were cautious. All of them were respectful in a way that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with the man whose arm was around my waist. And then I saw him. Ethan stood near the bar, his blonde date from the previous week replaced by a redhead in emerald green. He was laughing at something someone said, his expression easy, careless, until he saw us. The laughter died. His face went pale, then red, then pale again. He whispered something to his date, who looked toward us with naked curiosity. "He sees you," Dante murmured, his lips against my temple. "Good." "Dante, please don't. I'm not going to hurt him, Emma. Not here. Not tonight." His hand splayed possessively across my hip. "I'm just going to remind him what he lost." He guided me directly toward Ethan, each step deliberate, predatory. I wanted to resist, to pull away, but his grip was gentle iron, inescapable. Ethan's date melted away as we approached, survival instincts clearly intact. Ethan stood alone, trying to project confidence and failing miserably. "Carmichael." Dante's voice could have frozen nitrogen. "Enjoying the evening?" "Moretti." Ethan's eyes darted to me, then away. "I didn't expect to see you here, didn't you?" Dante's smile was a blade. "I go where I please, with whom I please. Emma, you remember Ethan, don't you?" "Unfortunately," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan flinched. "Emma, I wanted to apologize for the other night. I was shocked." "You were a coward," Dante interrupted pleasantly. "You've been a coward for years. Impregnating women you have no intention of supporting. Abandoning children you helped create. It's quite the pattern." Ethan's face went purple. "That's none of your... It became my business when you made Emma cry." Dante's expression never changed, but something dark and terrible flickered in his eyes. "She's under my protection now, which means you stay away from her. You don't call, you don't text, you don't acknowledge her existence. Are we clear? You can't just... I can. I am." Dante's hand moved to the small of my back, a gesture of ownership that made my breath catch. "Your daughter, Lily, isn't it, will want for nothing. Her education, her future, everything you should have provided will be taken care of. By me, not you. You've forfeited that right." I stiffened. "Dante." "But," he continued, ignoring my protest, "she'll never know your name. Emma will choose when and if Lily learns about her biological father. And my suggestion?" His smile turned cruel. "Would be never." Ethan looked like he'd been slapped. "You can't keep me from my own daughter. I can do anything I want, Carmichael. The question is whether you're stupid enough to test me." Dante leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to something that made even me shiver. "You abandoned her when she needed you. You don't get to play father now that someone else is providing. Walk away. Forget Emma exists. Forget Lily exists. And you might live long enough to regret what you've done." He turned us away before Ethan could respond, guiding me toward the dance floor where couples swayed to music I barely heard over the rushing in my ears. "You had no right," I hissed as his arms encircled me, pulling me into a waltz I didn't know how to dance. "Lily is my daughter. Mine. You don't get to make decisions about her life." "I just did." His hand on my waist guided me through steps my body somehow knew to follow. "He lost his chance, Emma. He doesn't deserve her. Doesn't deserve you. That's not your call to make, isn't it?" He spun me, and suddenly we were closer, his breath warm against my face. "You're mine. Your daughter is yours. Which makes her mine to protect too. I won't apologize for securing her future." Tears burned behind my eyes. "I'm not yours, Dante. Keep telling yourself that." His forehead rested against mine, our bodies moving together like we'd done this 1,000 times before. "But every time you don't pull away, every time you let me touch you, hold you, make decisions for you, you prove yourself wrong. And God help me, he was right. I wasn't pulling away. I was leaning in. I was letting him lead. I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, being his wouldn't be the worst thing in the world." The night bled into early morning before Dante finally took me home. We'd stayed at the gala for hours, dancing, mingling with people whose names I'd never remember, existing in a bubble where I was someone important, simply because I stood beside him. His hand never left my body, a touch at my waist, fingers laced through mine, his palm spread possessively across the small of my back, claiming me, marking me, making sure everyone in that ballroom understood exactly who I belonged to. And I'd let him. The car ride back was quiet, charged with something I didn't want to name. Dante sat close enough that our thighs touched, his hand resting on my knee, thumb tracing absent circles through the silk of my dress. "You were magnificent tonight," he said finally, his voice low, intimate in the darkness. "I didn't do anything. I just stood there while you orchestrated everything. You stood beside me. You didn't run. You let them see you're mine." His hand tightened slightly. "That's everything, Emma." We pulled up to my building, and my stomach twisted. The night was ending. Reality was waiting upstairs in the form of my sleeping daughter, and my cramped apartment, and my life that didn't include men like Dante Moretti. "Thank you," I said, reaching for the door handle, for the dress, for dinner, for everything. His hand caught my wrist. "I'm walking you up. That's not necessary. It's not negotiable." He was already out of the car, circling around to open my door, extending his hand like a king expecting obedience. I took it because arguing would wake the neighbors. We climbed the 3 flights in silence, his presence filling the narrow stairwell, making it feel smaller, more intimate. I fumbled with my keys, hyper-aware of him standing behind me, close enough that I could feel his heat. The door opened. Mrs. Chen looked up from the couch where she'd been dozing, her eyes widening slightly when she saw Dante. "Everything okay with Lily?" I asked, trying to sound normal. "Sleeping like an angel. No problems at all." Mrs. Chen gathered her things with practiced efficiency, her gaze flickering between Dante and me with knowing calculation. "I'll see myself out." She was gone before I could stop her, leaving me alone in my apartment with a man who looked utterly out of place among my thrift store furniture and peeling wallpaper. "You should go," I said, not looking at him. "It's late. Lily could wake up." "Show me." I turned. "What?" "Show me your daughter." His expression was unreadable. "I want to see her." Every maternal instinct I possessed screamed danger. But there was something in his eyes, something vulnerable beneath the dangerous exterior, that made me nod. I led him to the bedroom, easing the door open carefully. Lily was sprawled across our shared bed, the new rabbit clutched in one hand, her dark curls wild against the pillow. She looked so small, so perfect, so utterly innocent. Dante stood in the doorway, completely still, his gaze fixed on my sleeping daughter. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak. Then I saw his jaw tighten, his hands curl into fists at his sides. "She looks like you," he said finally, his voice rough. "She has her father's eyes, his hair. She has your strength. I can see it, even in sleep." He turned to me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "My mother used to say you could tell a person's soul by how they sleep. Peaceful sleepers have peaceful hearts." "And what does that make you?" I asked softly. His smile was bitter. "I haven't slept peacefully since I was 15 years old." The confession hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning I didn't fully understand. I pulled the door closed gently, leaving it cracked in case Lily called out. "You should leave," I said again, but there was no force behind the words. "I should." He stepped closer, backing me against the wall of my narrow hallway, his hands braced on either side of my head. "But I'm not going to. Dante, I've been patient, Emma. I've given you space, time. Let you pretend you have a choice in this. But seeing you tonight, watching every man in that room want what's mine, feeling you fit against me like you were made for this," his forehead rested against mine. "I'm done being patient. I'm not ready. You're terrified. There's a difference." His hand cupped my jaw, tilting my face up. "You're terrified because you feel it too. This thing between us, this inevitability. It's been less than a week. It's been a lifetime. I've been waiting for you my entire life, Emma. I just didn't know it until I saw you in that ballroom, invisible to everyone except me." His lips brushed mine, barely a kiss, more a promise of what could be. My hands found his chest, and I told myself I was pushing him away. But my fingers curled into his shirt instead, holding him close. "1 week," I whispered against his mouth. "Give me 1 week to process this. To figure out what I want without you overwhelming every thought in my head." He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching mine. 1 week? And then? And then we'll see. No. His thumb traced my lower lip, his expression absolute. 1 week. And then you're mine completely. No more hesitation. No more fear. You surrender, Emma. To this. To us. To me. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. But I am certain. And by the end of this week, you will be too. Lying. He pressed one more kiss to my forehead. Gentle and possessive all at once. Sleep well, beautiful. Dream of me. He was gone before I could respond, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the certainty that I'd just made a deal with the devil. The week passed in a blur of Dante's presence, invading every corner of my existence. On Monday, flowers arrived. Not a dozen roses, 3 dozen, blood red, with a card that simply said, Day 1. On Tuesday, a package appeared. A new laptop for me, educational toys for Lily, and a note. You mentioned wanting to finish your degree. Here's how. Day 2. Wednesday brought a letter from my landlord saying the building had been purchased by a new owner who was waiving rent for all current tenants for the next year. I didn't need to guess who the new owner was. Thursday, I found my car, the one that had been repossessed 8 months ago, parked outside my building with new registration and a bow on the hood. The note. You need independence, but you're still mine. Day 4. Friday morning, I woke to find my student loans had been paid in full. $38,000 gone like they'd never existed. The email confirmation came with a message. The past doesn't get to chain you anymore. Day 5. Each gift was perfectly calculated to remove an obstacle, to make my life easier, to prove that he could provide everything I'd ever struggled to achieve on my own. Each gift was also a chain, binding me tighter to him with every passing day. I should have been angry, should have thrown it all back in his face, should have told him to stop playing God with my life, but Lily had new clothes that fit. The electricity stayed on. I slept through the night without wondering how I'd pay for groceries. For the first time in 3 years, I could breathe without the constant weight of survival crushing my chest. And I hated how good it felt. Saturday, Dante called. Tomorrow is day 7. My heart hammered. I know. I'm sending a car at noon. Pack a bag for you and Lily. Enough for a few days. Where are we going? Does it matter? His voice was soft, dangerous. You're mine tomorrow, Emma, one way or another. I'd prefer you come willingly, and if I don't, silence. Then I'll wait. I'll give you more time, but I won't give you up, ever. So the question isn't whether you'll be mine, it's only when you'll stop fighting the inevitable. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, my life, my daughter sleeping peacefully in our bedroom, everything Dante had given us, everything he'd promised, everything he'd take if I let him. Mrs. Chen knocked on my door that evening, her expression knowing. The man who's been sending gifts, he's serious about you. Too serious, I admitted. Is that so bad? She settled into my second-hand armchair, her weathered hands folded in her lap. I've lived 83 years, Emma. I've seen love in many forms. Sometimes it's gentle, sometimes it's fierce, sometimes it's terrifying, but it's always a choice. He doesn't give me choices. He just takes over everything. Because you're drowning, and he knows it. Sometimes the kindest thing someone can do is save you from yourself. Her eyes softened. I see how you look at your phone when you think no one's watching. I see how you touch the things he sends like they're precious. You're already his child. You're just afraid to admit it. I barely know him. You know enough. You know he sees you. You know he protects you. You know he makes you feel safe. She stood, patting my hand. The question isn't whether you trust him. It's whether you trust yourself to deserve what he's offering. She left me with that truth sitting heavy in my chest. That night, I packed 2 bags. One for me, one for Lily. I told myself I could still change my mind, could still say no when the car arrived. But I knew I wouldn't. Sunday arrived bright and clear. The car pulled up at exactly noon, and this time Dante himself emerged. He wore jeans and a black sweater, casual in a way that should have made him seem less dangerous. It didn't. He looked like violence wrapped in cashmere, controlled power in human form. "Ready?" he asked. I looked down at Lily, who was clutching her new rabbit, her eyes wide with excitement at the prospect of an adventure, then back at Dante, who watched me with absolute certainty that I'd say yes. "Where are we going?" I asked one more time. "Somewhere safe, somewhere mine." "Somewhere you can stop running and finally rest." I took his hand. The drive was long, out of the city, through countryside that grew progressively more exclusive, more removed from the world I knew. Lily chattered happily in her car seat, captivated by Dante's patient answers to her endless questions. He was good with her, gentle, attentive in ways her own father had never been. And watching them together broke something open in my chest. We arrived at a house that wasn't a house. It was an estate. Sprawling grounds, security gates, a main building that looked like it belonged in European countryside rather than upstate New York. "This is yours?" I breathed. "One of several properties, but this is home, where I come when the city gets too loud." He lifted Lily from her seat with surprising ease, her small hand finding his shoulder with automatic trust. "Where I want you to be." He showed us inside, and it was beautiful. Warm despite its size, decorated with taste that spoke of money but also comfort. There were flowers in every room, a kitchen stocked with food, toys already waiting in one of the bedrooms, as if he'd known I'd say yes. As if there had never been any doubt. "The upstairs east wing is yours," he said, setting Lily down so she could explore. "Your room. A nursery for Lily. Private bathroom. Your own space." "Where will you be?" I asked. "The west wing. Close enough to protect you, far enough to give you room to breathe." His hand found mine. "I meant what I said, Emma. I won't force you into anything. This week was about proving I can provide for you, that you can trust me. What happens next is your choice. You said I was yours, that after today, you are mine. But being mine doesn't mean I take what you're not ready to give." He pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. "It means I'll wait, for as long as it takes, until you understand that this, us, is where you belong." Lily's laughter echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, pure and bright and happy in a way I hadn't heard in months. "She's safe here," Dante said softly. "You're both safe. No more worrying about rent or bills or whether you can afford groceries. No more drowning, Emma. I've got you. I'll always have you." I looked up at him, at this dangerous man who'd upended my entire life in a week, who'd given me everything I'd never dared hope for, who looked at me like I was something precious worth protecting. "Why?" I whispered. "Why me?" "Because I saw you," he said simply. "And once I saw you, I couldn't look away. Because you're strong and stubborn and beautiful and broken in ways I recognize. Because my mother would have loved you. Because—" He stopped, his jaw working. "Because I've been alone my entire life, Emma. And then I found you. And suddenly I wasn't anymore." The confession hung between us, raw and honest and terrifying. I rose on my toes and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was everything I'd been holding back all week. Fear and desire and surrender and need. His arms came around me immediately, crushing me against him, his mouth claiming mine with a hunger that should have scared me. It didn't. It felt like coming home. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were black fire. "Emma, I'm yours," I whispered. "I've been yours since the corridor, since you handed me your handkerchief and looked at me like I mattered. I was just too afraid to admit it." His smile was devastating. "No more fear?" "Terrified," I admitted, "but I'm done running." "Good." He kissed me again, softer this time, reverent. "Because I'm done waiting." The first night in Dante's house, I barely slept. Not because I was afraid, though perhaps I should have been, but because Lily had finally crashed around 8 o'clock after hours of exploring her new room, the garden, the library that had more books than she'd ever seen. She'd fallen asleep clutching her rabbit, a smile still on her face, and I'd tucked her in with hands that trembled. Then I'd found Dante waiting in the hallway. "She's happy here," he said. Not a question. She's two. Everything's an adventure. I closed Lily's door gently. This doesn't mean... It means everything. He stepped closer, crowding me against the wall in that way he had, making the world shrink to just the two of us. It means you chose me, chose this, chose us. I chose safety for my daughter. You chose me, he repeated, his mouth a breath away from mine. Stop lying to yourself, Emma. You're stronger than that. He was right. God, he was always right. What happens now? I whispered. His smile was dark promise. Now you rest. Tomorrow I introduce you to the rest of my world, the parts that aren't charity galas and expensive restaurants, the parts that will make you understand exactly who I am. I know who you are. You know what I've shown you. Tomorrow you'll know the truth. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, gentle despite the hunger in his eyes. Sleep, Emma. You're safe here. You'll always be safe with me. He left me in the hallway, and I stood there for long minutes, my heart racing, my skin burning where he'd touched me. I was in too deep. I knew it. And I couldn't bring myself to care. Morning came with sunlight streaming through windows twice the size of my entire old bedroom. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Lily's laughter echoing from somewhere downstairs. I found them in the kitchen, Dante at the stove, somehow domestic in jeans and a t-shirt. Lily perched on the counter beside him, watching with rapt attention as he flipped pancakes. Mama! She spotted me immediately. Dante's making breakfast, with chocolate chips. My heart clenched. She'd already started calling him by his first name, already accepted him into her world with the easy trust of children who hadn't learned to doubt yet. I hope you don't mind, Dante said, his eyes meeting mine over my daughter's head. She woke early. I heard her on the monitor. You have monitors set up already? I have security throughout the house, including the nursery. He plated a pancake, cutting it into careful pieces for Lily. Your safety isn't negotiable, Emma. Either of you. There it was again. That casual possessiveness that should have annoyed me. Instead, I found myself sitting at the island, accepting the coffee he poured, watching him care for my daughter like it was the most natural thing in the world. You're good with her, I said softly. Children are honest. They don't lie, don't manipulate, don't pretend to be something they're not. He set a plate in front of me. Pancakes, fruit, bacon. I respect that. We ate in comfortable silence, Lily chattering between bites about all the things she wanted to explore today. The pool. The horses she'd spotted in the distance. The library again, because there were so many books. After breakfast, Dante's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. I need to handle something, he said, his eyes finding mine. Business that can't wait. You'll stay here. I want to come. He went still. Emma, you said you'd show me the truth, show me who you really are. I stood, moving closer. I'm not a child you can protect from reality, Dante. If I'm yours, if we're doing this, then I need to understand all of it. For a long moment he studied me, something like approval flickering in his dark eyes. Lily stays here, he said finally. With security. With people I trust. Okay. What you'll see today, it may change how you look at me, then let it. I met his gaze steadily. I'd rather know the truth than live in a pretty lie. His smile was sharp, dangerous, proud. Get dressed. Something practical. We leave in 30 minutes. The business Dante needed to handle was in a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, in a neighborhood where even the streetlights seemed afraid to work properly. We arrived in a convoy, 3 black SUVs, men in suits with weapons I could see holstered at their sides. This wasn't the careful discretion of the gala. This was raw power, undisguised and unapologetic. Dante helped me from the car, his hand possessive at my waist. Stay close to me. Don't speak unless spoken to. And if I tell you to leave, you leave. Understood? I nodded, my mouth too dry to form words. The warehouse interior was exactly what I'd expected. Concrete floors, harsh lighting, the smell of oil and fear. And in the center, tied to a chair, was a man I'd never seen before. He was bleeding. Not fresh wounds, but enough to suggest he'd been there for a while. His eyes widened when he saw Dante, and something like terror crossed his face. "Mr. Moretti," he gasped. "Please, I can explain how you stole from me?" Dante's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. It was the most terrifying sound I'd ever heard. "Explain how you thought I wouldn't notice $200,000 missing from the shipment accounts? It was a mistake. I was going to put it back. You were going to run." Dante circled the chair like a predator sizing up prey. "To Mexico, I believe, with your girlfriend and my money. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" The man's face crumpled. "I have a family. So do I." Dante's hand found the small of my back, a gesture that made the man's eyes snap to me in confusion. "And unlike you, I protect what's mine. I don't steal from the people who trust me. I don't betray those who've shown me loyalty." He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward with a briefcase, flipped it open. Stacks of cash, the missing money presumably. "This is what you stole," Dante said. "This is what you valued more than your integrity, more than your life. Please." "I'm not going to kill you," Dante interrupted, and I saw the man's shoulders sag with relief. "That would be too easy, too quick. Instead, you're going to work for me. Every cent you stole, you'll pay back triple. It'll take you 10 years, maybe 15. You'll do it from the bottom. The worst jobs, the longest hours, the positions even my newest recruits won't touch. And every day, you'll remember that I could have killed you, that I showed you mercy. And that mercy has a price." He turned to his men. "Get him out of here. Set him up with Marco. Make sure he understands the terms." They dragged the man away, his protests fading as a door slammed shut. I stood frozen, processing what I'd just witnessed, the casual authority, the calculated mercy that was somehow more terrifying than violence, the absolute certainty that Dante's word was law. "That's who I am," Dante said quietly, turning to face me. "I'm not a good man, Emma. I make people disappear when they cross me. I run businesses that operate in shadows. I have blood on my hands that will never wash clean. I know." "Do you?" He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "Do you understand what being with me means? The danger? The world you're entering? I understand that man stole from you, and you could have killed him. But you didn't." I met his gaze steadily. "I understand that you value loyalty above everything, that you protect what's yours, that you're ruthless with your enemies and generous with those you care about. Those are just words, and your actions show me the truth." I reached up, cupping his jaw, feeling the tension there. "You've shown me who you are, Dante. Every day this week. Not just the money or the gifts, but the way you are with Lily, the way you look at me like I'm something precious. The way you've never once pressured me into anything I wasn't ready for. I terrify you." "Yes," I admitted, "but not because I think you'll hurt me. Because I'm falling for you. And that's far more dangerous than anything else you could do." Something broke in his expression, a crack in that carefully controlled facade. His hands came up to frame my face, his forehead resting against mine. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he said roughly. "Never wanted to protect someone so badly it aches. Never needed someone to be safe and happy more than I need my next breath." "Then keep me safe," I whispered. "Keep us safe. And let me do the same for you." He kissed me then, and it was different from before, not just hunger and possession, but something deeper. Something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. When we broke apart, his eyes were nearly black. "We should go. Lily will be wondering where you are in a minute." I stepped back, needing space to say what came next. "I need to know something first. Anything. Ethan. What you said about him staying away from Lily." I took a breath. "Did you mean it? Will you really handle it if he tries to be involved?" Dante's expression hardened. "Ethan Carmichael signed away his rights to your daughter the moment he abandoned you. If he's smart, he'll stay far away. If he's not," his jaw tightened, "then I'll make the decision for him, permanently. I don't want you to kill him. I won't. But I'll make sure he understands that approaching you or Lily means losing everything he values, his company, his reputation, his freedom." Dante's hand found mine. I told you. You're mine to protect. Both of you. Anyone who threatens that will answer to me. It should have scared me. That absolute certainty, that willingness to destroy anyone who got in his way. Instead, I felt safe for the first time in years. The weeks that followed blurred into a new kind of normal. I moved into Dante's house permanently. Not in the guest wing, but in his space. His bed. His life. Lily adapted with the resilience of childhood, treating the estate like her personal kingdom, the staff like her loyal subjects. Dante was gone sometimes, business that took him to dark places I didn't ask about. But he always came back, always found me first, kissed me like I was air and he'd been drowning, held me like I might disappear if he let go. I enrolled in online classes to finish my degree, sociology, because I wanted to understand the world that had broken me and the one that had saved me. Dante hired a tutor for Lily, the best early childhood educator money could buy. We built a life, strange and unconventional, and founded on a power dynamic that should have been unhealthy. But it worked. We worked. 3 months in, Ethan made his mistake. I was at the house alone, Dante in the city for meetings, Lily napping upstairs, when security called. "Ma'am, there's someone at the gate. Claims he knows you. Ethan Carmichael." My blood ran cold. "Don't let him in. Call Dante. Now." But Ethan must have anticipated that. Must have known he had minutes before Dante's world descended on him. Because my phone rang immediately after. A video call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered against my better judgment. Ethan's face filled the screen, and he looked desperate, unhinged. "Emma, please, I just want to talk. 5 minutes. Just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You made your choice 3 years ago. I was wrong. I was stupid and scared, and I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me." "You threw away your daughter," I said coldly. "You don't get to regret that now. She's my child. She's mine. Only mine. You signed away any rights when you blocked my number." I could see security approaching him in the background of his video. "Leave, Ethan. Before you make this worse. I have rights. Legal rights. I'll sue for custody. I'll take her away from you and your criminal boyfriend." The call ended abruptly, as security physically removed him from the property. I sat trembling on the couch, my phone clutched in shaking hands, until I heard the front door slam open. Dante stormed in, his expression black with rage. "Where is he?" "Gone. Security removed him." I stood on shaking legs. "He threatened to sue for custody, called you a criminal." "He's right. I am." Dante pulled me against him, his arms iron bands around my waist. "But I'm your criminal. And he just made the biggest mistake of his life." "Dante, what are you going to do?" "What I should have done weeks ago." He pulled back, his hands framing my face. "I'm going to make sure he never threatens you again, that he can't take Lily, that you're protected legally, financially, permanently." "How?" "Marry me." The world stopped spinning. "What?" "Marry me, Emma. Be my wife. Let me adopt Lily legally. Give me the right to protect you both in every way that matters." His eyes burned into mine. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." My hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. "This is insane. This is us. We've been insane from the start." His thumb traced my lower lip. "Say yes. Let me give you my name. Let me make you mine in every way the law recognizes." I thought of Lily sleeping upstairs, of the life we'd built here, of the way Dante looked at me like I was his whole world, of how safe I felt in his arms, how protected, how absolutely certain that he would burn the world down before letting anyone hurt us. "Yes," I whispered. His kiss was fierce, possessive, sealing a promise that felt more binding than any legal document. "Tomorrow," he said against my mouth. "We'll do it tomorrow. I have a judge who owes me favors. We'll make it legal, make it real, and then Ethan Carmichael won't be able to touch either of you." "Tomorrow?" I laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "Dante, that's not how normal people— We're not normal people. We never will be." He lifted me, my legs wrapping around his waist automatically. "Tomorrow, you become Emma Moretti. and anyone who tries to take you from me will learn exactly how ruthless I can be." We married in his study with Lily as our witness, a judge who asked no questions, and vows that felt more like declarations of war against anyone who would try to separate us. The adoption papers were filed that same day. By the end of the week, Lily was legally Dante's daughter. Ethan's lawyers received notice that any custody claim would be met with evidence of abandonment, criminal neglect, and a dozen other charges Dante's legal team had somehow unearthed. Ethan never contacted us again. Life settled into something that felt almost like peace. Dante's business continued. Darker things I chose not to examine too closely because I'd married a man who operated in shadows, and I'd done it with open eyes. But he kept that world separate from ours. From Lily's laughter echoing through the halls. From the life we built in the spaces between his empire. 6 months after the wedding, I found Dante in Lily's room, watching her sleep with an expression that made my heart ache. "She called me Papa today," he said without turning. "Did you know that?" I moved to his side, his arm coming around me automatically. "She asks me almost every night if you're her real daddy." I tell her yes, because you are. Her blood father is nothing. You're the one who reads her bedtime stories, who teaches her to ride horses, who checks for monsters under her bed. I looked up at him, at this dangerous man who'd become my entire world. "You're her father in every way that matters." His kiss was soft, reverent. "I love you, Emma Moretti. You and our daughter. More than I thought I was capable of loving anything. I love you too." I settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, strong and steady and sure. "Even though you're terrifying and possessive and completely insane." "Especially because of that," he corrected with dark amusement. We stood there in the doorway, watching our daughter sleep, and I thought about the night I'd served champagne at a gala, invisible and exhausted and barely surviving. I thought about Ethan's rejection, his shock when he'd seen me with Dante, his pathetic attempt to reclaim what he'd thrown away. I thought about how Dante had looked at me in that service corridor and decided I was worth keeping. And I realized that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the safest. Sometimes the man everyone feared was exactly the man you needed to fear for you. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for choosing me, for making me believe I deserved to be chosen." Dante turned me in his arms, his forehead resting against mine in that gesture that had become ours. "I didn't make you believe anything, Emma. I just reminded you of the truth you'd forgotten, that you were always worth everything. You just needed someone ruthless enough to prove it." Outside, the sun was setting over the estate, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Lily stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about horses and pancakes, and Dante's arms tightened around me. Possessive and protective, and absolutely certain. I was home. We were home. And anyone who tried to take that away would learn exactly what happened when you threatened something that belonged to Dante Moretti, because I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his queen, the mother of his child, the woman he'd chosen above all others. And in his world, that made me untouchable. The woman who'd been invisible at the ball now stood beside the most powerful man in the city, and everyone who'd looked through me before now couldn't look away. Ethan had rejected me until he'd seen me with Dante, but by then it was far too late. I belonged to someone who would never let me go, and I'd chosen him right back, with every fiber of my being. This was my life now, our life, and it was more than I'd ever dared to dream.